As critics began putting together their 10 best lists for the year, one film that keeps appearing is Paul Schrader's Affliction. Based on the acclaimed bestseller by Russell Banks, Affliction is the story of a small-town cop whose life is quickly spinning out of control. Joining me now for a conversation about the film's writer and director, Paul Schrader. He is best known for his work on films like American Gigolo, Taxi Driver, and Raging Bull. Also here, three of the film's stars. Nick Nolte, whose portrayal of Wade Whitehouse has earned him a New York Film Critics Award for Best Actor. Willem, Dafoe, who plays Wade's brother and the narrator of the story. And James Corburn, who plays Glenn, the patriarch of this dysfunctional family. I am pleased to have them all. I start with you, Mr. Schrader. Tell me about this movie and how it got started and, you know.
Well, it's a novel by Russell Banks.
Right.
And it's about male violence in a way, you know, the kind that is born in the blood and bred in the bone and passed down from father to son, and about a man who's trying to escape the shadow of that violence. That man is a small-town cop. There's a hunting accident. He thinks it's a murder. He's going to redeem himself in the eyes of his community and his ex-wife. Only about two-thirds of the way through the book and through the movie, you realize there was no murder, and that this man is going crazy, and that it never was about a hunting accident. It always was about the sins of the father.
The sentence of the father.
The sins of the father.
No, the sins of the father. Also the sentence of the father. Yeah. Was it hard to make? I don't mean the making of film, but getting somebody to do it.
It was hard to finance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they said, we don't need another one.
Well, it just, it takes time. You know, it takes time and persistence, and you have to believe in what you're doing, and you have to figure out ways to do things cheaper, and you have to somehow cajole like the people like around this table to work, you know, for less than they are worth, and hope that at the end of the day they will be proud of the sacrifice they made.
You wanted to make it so bad because?
I thought it was worth making.
Just that. It was a film that ought to be made.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if that's not a good enough rule of thumb for an artist, I don't know what it is.
And Nick, you know, you read this script, or Paul sends you a script, or calls you up and says, this is the character, Wade.
Yes. Yes, he sent me the script. I read it. And I called Paul, and I said, this is wonderful. Let's talk about it. And Paul came over, and I said, let's do it. And Paul said, I'll go out and raise the money. And he took him a year. He worked his ass off. He got the money, and I said, I'm not ready yet. And, Paul didn't speak to me for about 2 years. The next phone call was, Paul, I've got the money. And so here we are today. But that was a three-year wait.
Getting the money.
Actually, it's more. It's four upon five. Yeah.
And he was gracious enough to let me back in. Yeah. But by then, I think I understood Wade better.
Yeah, well, Nick gives an extraordinary performance, and one of the reasons, I think, is that he lived with the role so long, you know, and he sort of dragged this book and this material with him from place to place, so that by the time we came to rehearse, I found myself in a situation of being somewhat even less informed than he was, and
about Wade.
About Wade, and I think that in many ways he ghost-directed that film. And Nick, you know, I've never said this to you before, but I think it's true. I think he created a level, a standard of excellence that brought all the other actors right up, you know, and created that world.
Indeed, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it was an exquisite performance. I mean, the relationship that we formed during the shooting of this thing was extraordinary. I mean, I never had so much fun in my life.
Actor, friend to friend.
Actor to actor, yeah, playing the characters and, you know, coming up with that stuff because, well, the script was a wonderful script. I mean, he excised the essence from the book.
Yeah, the director liked the script, too, didn't
he? Yeah. Yeah, no, we all
Before we go
it.
to tell me about and the role that he has in the relationship between these two brothers. What was it about Wade that that's essential? What was it that turned you on to the character? I mean, what is it that makes this a great character, a great role?
I think it's the fragileness, how fragile life is, how fragile and how difficult it is to get through a violent world. I think that's what I have felt all my life, is that this is a scary world. It's a competitive world. You're to succeed. There are wars. And you're damn lucky if you can survive it. And I think underneath there's always been a fear of it, and I sensed this was the essence of that kind of worldly violence and fear that's put upon us all.
A little bit like there, but for the grace of God goes me.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And the brother and the relationship, I mean, how does the brother see the dynamic of this relationship with the brother who's the narrator, who's at the opposite end of all these late-night phone calls?
Well, he's the guy that has escaped, or at least escaped for now. He's removed himself physically from the town, and he's like a shadow of Wade, sort of, because he's removes himself from the family. He has no family himself. He moves to Boston, and he kind of vicariously sees what's going on with Wade and has Wade do all the mopping up.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a strange relationship. It's actually, my role in the film is not that extensive, but I do narrate it. But as I watched it the other day, it's a very complex relationship.
It is, and that's why I would ask the question, I mean, to understand, you know, what's going on between these two.
But in order to perform it, I didn't have to understand all the complexities. You know, sometimes it's
you can
very
show
much
complexity without understanding.
No, it's not a question of showing. It's a question of placement. And Paul placed the narration very beautifully. The narration, which a lot I think is just directly from the book, is written very beautifully. And then there's a curious function that he has in he plays on Wade's paranoia or imagination.
Well, I came to realize, and some of this was in post-production, the complexity of these two brothers that I didn't even realize when I read the book, when I adapted the book, when I directed the film. Which is when you have two siblings, the subject of paternal violence. One of those siblings is going to be selected out for the violence, and he'll be hit. The other sibling, the younger sibling, his relationship to the older sibling is very complex, because on one hand, he's very grateful. You know, my brother is taking the hits for me. On the other hand, he's jealous, because his brother is getting the love. Because in that family, this is love. You know, I love you so much, yeah, I'll love you some more. And what better recipe for passive-aggressive behavior than to simultaneously be grateful and jealous at the same time? So that the younger brother's behavior and actions are all very twisted. And it was something that I came to realize the deeper I got into the book, and some of it I didn't even realize till I was finished directing the film.
Tell me about the father.
Why, hell, he was full of love.
Just didn't know how to express it.
Well, he expressed it in a very strange way, yeah, but I think he wanted his children to be, his two brothers, the brothers, all of his sons to be men by God, and, you know, I'll beat you to death if you don't become men. And as it turns out, they kind of do become strange men. Pop is, I don't know, he's a character that I've seen around a lot. I got some of the stuff, the alcoholic part from Peckinpah, who I worked with a lot, who was never a violent man, but underneath all of this stuff was a lot of violence.
Did it come from his father?
No, well, it may have, because his father was a judge, and all of his brother was a judge. All of his family seemed to be in the law somehow. And he was kind of like the outcast of the family because he was a filmmaker. But it all came from Paul's script. I got everything from that. He made me cut my hair.
Yeah.
I mean, he said, I like to have a little bit like mine.
It made you look a little older.
I said, are you kidding, man?
He wouldn't go that far.
All right, let me roll tape here. This is when the family gathers for the funeral of the mother after Pop let the boiler run out. Here it is.
I know what I've got for children. Jesus freaks and candy asses. Oh. Just leave it, Wade. Praise the Lord.
There it is, huh? in that scene.
Yeah, that's the family constellation.
all the gang coming together here for a little conference. Yeah.
When you cast this,
Yeah.
I mean, when you were writing it, did you have actors in mind? Did you see? I mean, are you thinking of a family and how these people?
Usually I don't, because I think that makes for lazy writing, because you imagine the actor doing the lines and then you don't write it. If anything, you should try to think of non-actors doing it so you can write it even better. But
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. Sounds like another director we talked to.
but somewhere along the line, Nick's image started coming into my head. I don't know how deeply I was into the script, but even though I don't like to think about actors while writing, I started thinking about him. By the time I was finished in the script, I knew that it would have to go to him first.
Yeah. And then you went to Jim and you went to Willem and you did.
Yeah, well, we had that little hiatus that Nick spoke of earlier.
Now, with some directors,
You're a coward. You're a coward, Paul. I've apologized. I've been on my knees.
I would have waited like about 8 more years. I was going to come knocking on Paul's door.
You know a good script when you see it.
why did you decide to do this? I mean, is this a character that you liked, or you had some time on your hands, or the money was right, or
No.
you liked this?
I liked it.
Certainly not the latter two.
Yeah, I liked it, and I remember when I was doing Light Sleeper with Paul, I don't know whether you remember this, but he gave me the novel Affliction. And he said, take a look at this. It probably doesn't have anything to do with the character I was playing, John Latour, but read it. There's something there. And I read it, and I fell in love with it. And I proceeded then to read all of Russell Banks's other stuff. And I knew Paul was going to do it, so I was watching it, but I knew I couldn't play Wade Whitehouse. I mean, whether Nick Nolte was around or not, so I just watched it. I didn't think about me having a place in the cast, but I was curious about it, and the book was very close to my heart. So when Paul said, you could play the brother, I said, but of course.
And Willem is being, in fact, it's more generous than that. When you make serious films at a small budget, at some point you need to rely on the kindness of your friends. And people like Willem or Sissy Spacek to come on board and help you out when you can't afford to pay them what they're worth means a lot.
All right, let me show Sissy since she's not here. Here is a segment in which Wade and Sissy's character, who is Margie, are talking about marriage and the future and what might be. Roll tape.
Oh, wait.
Well, it's just a thought, that's all.
Well, you've been married twice.
Yeah, but it was to the same woman. I was just a kid.
But Sissy is really a good chick, boy. She really came alive. She was like the snowflake in this hell. She was just landed there, and she was right there with us all.
Very inventive. Sissy's the one that came up with the whole idea to tie the father and son together with the licking of the salt.
Yeah.
She said, if I had something that I could see in both of them, I could finally come to a realization that they were same.
Yeah.
They had similar, the same. And so Paul called me and said it came from Sissy.
Well, it actually came from Jack Fisk.
Oh, did it come from Jack?
Her husband, who's also the production designer in Thin Red Line.
Yes, right.
Now, I mean, the toothache, there's a toothache and then there's this gruesome pulling of the tooth.
Right.
What's that about?
Well,
You think that's what's causing the pain and it's not?
No, yes, that's a way that you don't have to feel the real pain. It's the way to abstract the violence. It's a way, as long as I've got that tooth going on, I don't have to concentrate on what's underneath that. When he pulls the tooth, it's all over. He has no choice.
Yeah.
He has no chance. It's going to come out then. But as long as he keeps that tooth aching and aching, he has pain that he can deny the other, So he needs a physical.
In fact, doesn't the narration say something like that? What is the point that the narrator says?
Well, during the phone call, I encourage him to take care of the little things first.
That's right.
Go to a dentist. For God's sakes, go to a dentist.
You're such an
I saw it coming.
brother.
I saw it coming.
You're just propelling us to our destiny with the pops here.
Now, you buy into the, obviously, this resonates with you, this notion of sins of the father visited on the kids. And Nick understands how precarious life is, in a sense. No certainty, and the people who have certainty, like Jim's character in this film, the father, are faking it. Is that the point?
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, I think the thing that I'm always fascinated in art, and one of the things art does really well is try to explain how it is that people act against their own best behavior, best knowledge. You know that X is good. You know that you want to do X, and then you go out and do Y. Ordinary forms of thinking don't explain this kind of behavior. This is what stories and fantasies and the imagination, and this is about people who are trapped in patterns of behavior that they know are wrong and can't get out.
Sounds like today's headlines, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
It sure does.
Yes, it does.
White Houses, aren't they?
Yeah. It does. Yeah. Do you accept this and you see this the same way? This whole notion of what is at the center of this film, the notion of that we are the products of our genes and we are the products of our
I think, well, the thing that occurs to me is Wade doesn't know, he hasn't been taught how to deal with things any differently than what his father has presented him with. And that's his only way. I mean,
that's a prescription for disaster.
Yeah, and his relationship with, for example, Margie Fogg really comes down to dominance. He has very tender thoughts towards her, but his only way to deal with her is kind of to bring her back to the home and, fill familiar patterns. And I think that's very clear. Wade's a man that wants to do the right thing over and over and over again, but he only understands domination and in terms of filing the suit.
Yeah, love has never been mirrored. He wants to love, but he doesn't know how to love because it's never been mirrored to him. So he has a concept of love in his head, but it's a concept. And he wants to be a good man, but he desperately wants to be a good man, but he can't. He doesn't know how to be a good man. So everything he does is off the edge. He's sloppy with it.
Yeah, and one of the amazing things of Nick's performance is there are scenes where you can actually see this character's mind working. You can see the rusty cranks and wheels turning, and you can see him add 1 and 1 and get 3.
3.
Not hard to do. Just takes years of practice. You just have to live in Hollywood and live in the United States of America, go through the 60s and Vietnam.
And you can make 1 and 1.
You can make 20 and watch an impeachment hearing, and you can make 50 into $1 billion. It's real simple.
The thing
I see. I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, now you do.
No, I know.
The thing that I appreciated so much about working with Nick was watching this subtle dynamic of it. It was very kind of O'Neillian in this slow dynamic that grew and grew. You could just watch it just slowly go until that the teeth pulling scene where it just all comes together. My God, I was sitting over there with tears in my eyes watching this guy go through this stuff, man. I mean, it was a really, truly wonderful dynamic, and it was great to be part of all of this, and I am so glad that you hired me to do it, Paul.
Well, was this a fun set to be on with all of this heavy?
Actually,
It really was.
It was, because when you're doing something that is worthwhile, and you're working long hours, and you have a sense of purpose, that's actually why we all do what we do. What's really not fun is sitting in your trailer waiting for them to rig an explosion.
I know why you do it. If you couldn't do this, you're going to shoot yourself. Because it's all in there.
That's true. We sat around the table trying to keep warm in this house, swapping war stories. It was great.
Thank you all. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Thank you, Paul. Affliction opens December 30th in New York and in Los Angeles. It opens around the country on January 15th. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.